Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about governing policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. This month of June, Albania has the presidency of the UN Security Council. And as that, they are promising to look closer at things dealing with human rights. And they are promising to look closer at what tools are needed, what things and concessions are needed to bring an end to the fighting between Ukraine and Russia. At this point, we have hit the 100-day mark or more in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. After of course, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. You'll hear the Albanian ambassador. He is going to say in some of his remarks that Russia was claiming that there was a incident of genocide against the Russian people that were living within the Ukrainian borders. The UN Security Council found no evidence of this, and that would be one of the reasons why Russia, of course, invaded Ukraine. You're also going to hear the Albanian ambassador talk about things dealing with food security and other human rights violations that are happening around the world. One of those is in Myanmar. Of course, they carried out the executions of what would seem to be political prisoners. Those who were outspoken against the government were put to death. And while the United Nations in general and Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, did make a statement condemning the executions of people in general, saying that does not support human rights and the right to life. So we'll have to look forward to seeing what the Albanian government does with the UN Security Council and how they proceed with things for the month of June in different projects to bring about more security to human rights.
Great, good afternoon. In a short while, we will be joined by Maximo Torero, the Food and Agriculture Organization's chief economist. He will be here to brief you on the FAO Food Price Index. sadly, I'm sad to report again another attack on peacekeepers in Mali, and we are unfortunately have to report that two of our peacekeeping colleagues were killed this morning in Mali after their vehicle, an armored personnel carrier, was hit by an improvised explosive device. This happened outside of the town of Douentza in the Mopti region. Two other peacekeepers were injured in the attack. Our colleagues have managed to secure the area. We're trying to get a bit more detail. This is the sixth incident in which a convoy, a UN peacekeeping convoy, was hit since May 22nd. It is the second fatal attack on a UN peacekeeping convoy in just this week. The Secretary General condemns this new attack on our peacekeepers, who, as you know, are just fulfilling the mandate in Mali given to them by the Security Council in extremely challenging conditions. The Secretary General wishes a prompt recovery to the injured peacekeepers. The head of the UN mission in Mali, El Ghassim Mwane, also condemned this new attack. He also condemned the attack in the Kayes region earlier this week, in which two members of the Malian Red Cross were killed. Despite these challenging circumstances, it's also important to note that our colleagues are continuing their mandated work. As an example, the UN peacekeeping mission helped to rehabilitate two bridges in the Mopti region, which had been destroyed in earlier attacks. The restoration of these two bridges will bring relief to the people of the region and will facilitate the resumption of travel, commerce, and activity, including between Mopti and Bandiagara. Meanwhile, in the Kidal region and Gao region, peacekeepers assisted the population of Anefis and Tabankor towns as part of their ongoing support to the population in the north. And a note for you on Myanmar to tell you that we are deeply troubled by the Myanmar military's decision to proceed with the execution of two pro-democracy activists after they received their death sentences. This is a blatant violation of the right to life, liberty, and security of persons as per Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Secretary General reiterates his call for the respect of people's right to freedom of opinion and expression, and also to drop all charges against those arrested on charges related to the exercise of their fundamental freedoms and rights, and for their immediate release of all political prisoners in Myanmar. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights enshrines the principles of equality before the law, the presumption of innocence, the right to fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal, and all of the guarantees necessary for a person's defense. The Secretary General considers that the death penalty cannot be reconciled with the full respect of the right to life. Abolition is necessary and desirable for the enhancement of human dignity and the progressive development of human rights. An update from Haiti and the security situation there. Our humanitarian agencies are telling us that their ability to provide life-saving assistance is severely limited by worsening gang violence, especially in the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince. At least 188 people have been killed, including 96 suspected gang members, according to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as the UN office in Haiti. Almost 17,000 people have been displaced from Port-au-Prince since April 24th alone. Incidents of kidnapping for ransom have increased dramatically, with some 200 cases in Port-au-Prince recorded in the month of May. That's according to the UN mission. Access to vulnerable communities is acutely restricted due to gang activity, hampering the implementation and monitoring of humanitarian interventions. Our partners have also been unable to collect and deliver relief supplies due to lack of access to the port area. This week also marks 1 year since transportation links to the south of the country were closed down by gang activity. Reaching the north is also problematic. Malnutrition rates in the Cité Soleil neighborhood of Port-au-Prince have risen 20% of children under 5 now suffering from acute malnutrition, a key indicator of a crisis situation. In spite of security constraints, UN agencies and partners continue to deliver relief items where possible. In 2022, the humanitarian community estimates that 4.9 million men, women, and children need humanitarian assistance. So far, $73 million have been received for Haiti's humanitarian response plan against an appeal of $373 million. Just staying on with humanitarian updates, in northern Ethiopia, we and our partners are continuing to provide humanitarian assistance across Tigray, Afar, and Amhara. In the past week, 320 trucks carrying food, nutrition supplies, and household items arrived in Tigray via the Samara-Abala-Mekele road. Since the resumption of convoys at the beginning of April, food has now been sent to 68 priority districts across Tigray. More than 500,000 people have received assistance, but this needs also to be sustained, as only about one-third of the people targeted have received assistance under the current round of distributions, which began in October. The supply of fuel continues to constrain our operations, with no additional supplies brought in during the past week. Reserves are running low again. In the neighboring Afar and Amhara regions, humanitarian needs also remain extremely high. In Amhara, we and our partners have helped more than 1 million men, women, and children in the latest round of food distribution that began in mid-March. We've also been working with partners to conduct nutrition screening alongside measles vaccination campaign, screening close to 1 million children in recent weeks. Efforts to increase the assistance continues in Afar. Some 924,000 people have received food assistance since late February. The Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, will be traveling to Central Asia from the 5th to the 12th of June of this year, of course, to represent the Secretary General at the second International High-Level Conference on the International Decade for Action. The conference is entitled Water for Sustainable Development, 2018-2028. That will take place in Tajikistan on the 7th and 8th of July. Following invitations from other countries in the region, the Deputy Secretary General will also visit Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. During her visits, she will engage firsthand with national authorities, UN staff, and other partners, including youth and women representatives, civil society organizations, to see how these countries are dealing with a three-dimensional crisis affecting food, energy, and finance, efforts towards rescuing the Sustainable Development Goals, and leaving no one behind. In Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, the Deputy Secretary General will also participate in the signing ceremony of the first UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, developed as part of the repositioning of the UN development system. She will be returning back to New York on the 12th of June. And in a statement issued today, Amina Wad, the UN Crisis Coordinator for Ukraine, noted that we are marking 100 days since the start of the Russian invasion in Ukraine that started on 24th February. 100 days of suffering, devastation, and destruction on a massive scale. 100 days of unabated warfare, including indiscriminate bombardment, terrorizing civilians, and shelling hospitals, schools, and homes. 100 days of life loss and people uprooted, the lives of millions shattered. This war's toll on civilians is unacceptable, he said, stressing that this war has no winner. Mr. Wad noted that at least 15.7 million people in Ukraine are now in urgent need of humanitarian assistance and protection, and numbers are rising by the day as the war continues to ravage. He did point out that more than 5 million children had their education suspended, 14 million people have been forced to flee, more than 260 health facilities have come under attack, and severe damage to water systems has left millions of people without regular access to water and energy. With winter coming, risks to people's lives are severe. Mr. Wad added that we, along with more than 260 humanitarian partners in Ukraine, have scaled up at record speed and deployed additional staff across the country to support the humanitarian response. Our colleagues tell us that so far 7.8 million people with life-saving assistance have been reached so far. This includes an increase of almost 190,000 more people than reached last week. By now, more than 6.6 million Ukrainians have received food and livelihood assistance. More than 2.7 million have been able to access health services and supplies. More than 1.6 million have received cash assistance, which is so critical for people as job opportunities continue to shrink and prices increase. On funding, as of today, our flash appeal is 72% funded, with $1.6 billion out of the $2.24 billion required. We thank our donors for their contribution and count on their continued support. In a statement we issued yesterday afternoon, the Secretary General welcomed the agreement by the government of Yemen and the Houthis to renew the truce in Yemen for an additional 2 months under the same terms as the original agreement. Mr. Guterres strongly urged the parties to complete the full implementation of the terms of the truce without delay in order to uphold the interests of all Yemenis who continue to suffer from one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Also, I want to underscore an example of the human cost of this war. The UN Human Rights Office in Yemen said that for the past 2 months, as the truce has meant that a lot of people in Yemen have seen violence and hostilities decrease. But even so, between the 2nd of April and June 1st, the Human Rights Office gathered preliminary information indicating that at least 19 civilians were killed, 32 injured in some 20 incidents of conflict-related violence. The majority of these casualties were caused by landmines, including improvised mines and explosive remnants of war. I think I was asked by someone in this room yesterday about Brazil. I think it was you, Edward. I can tell you that our team there, led by resident coordinator Sylvia Rux, said that they offered solidarity to the victims of the heavy rains that caused destruction in the metropolitan areas of Recife in the northeastern region. Our team is monitoring the situation with concern and recognizes the efforts of authorities at different levels to rescue people and minimize the immediate impact of disaster. On the ground in Recife, the UN team is working with local authorities to assess the impacts of the disaster, especially on children, pregnant and lactating women, and also providing psychosocial support. We're also supporting local authorities and partners to raise donations and share information with the impacted population. In post-disaster reconstruction period, the UN team will offer support to authorities to boost resilience in the city, with UNICEF, UN Habitat, and the Office for Disaster Risk Reduction fully engaged with local authorities. A couple of international days to flag to you. Today is World Bicycle Day. I biked to work this morning, which highlights the uniqueness, longevity, and versatility of the bicycle, a simple, affordable, reliable, clean, and environmentally fit, sustainable means of transport. Today is also the International Day of Innocent Children Victims of Aggression, and Sunday is the International Day for the fight against illegal, underreported, and unregulated fishing, and it is also World Environment Day. In a message for the day, the Secretary General notes that the theme of this year's World Environment Day, Only One Earth, is a simple statement of fact. He stressed that this planet is our only home, adding that it is vital we safeguard its health and atmosphere, the richness and diversity of life on Earth, ecosystems, because they're all finite resources. On Monday, there will be a briefing in this very room at 3 p.m. in the afternoon by the President of the European Council, Charles Michel. He'll be here to brief you, according to his office, on the war in Ukraine. I think Mr. Michel is addressing the Security Council, and he will be having a working lunch with the Secretary General of the United Nations as well. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Couple of follow-up questions. On the 2 peacekeepers killed in Mali, do we know where they're from?
They were Egyptians.
Thank you. And secondly, on Myanmar and the 2 death sentences that the Secretary General is protesting against, could you send us some details on their names?
Yes, of course, yes, that would have been helpful.
And also, does the Secretary General have any comment on court?
Sylviana, I can't hear. If you have to just remove the phone if you don't mind. Thank you. Sorry.
Does the Secretary General have any comment on a court in Myanmar ruling that a case for election fraud can go ahead against Aung San Suu Kyi about the election that her party won in November 2020.
I mean, I think our call in Myanmar is for return to democracy, for respect of the fundamental rights of all people in Myanmar, including Aung San Suu Kyi, and I think I will leave it at that. Edward, then Michelle.
Hi, Steph. A follow-up about the attack in Mali.
Uh-huh.
First, I want to confirm the location of this attack is Douentza, right?
Yes, they were going from Douentza. Took place outside of Douentza, and they were going from Douentza to Timbuktu. They were escorting, from what I understand, civilian trucks. So,
according to your description, it seems like the attackers, they understood they are UN peacekeepers.
I think we have to first. We have to let the.
I mean, my question.
I know. We have to let the dust settle a little bit. This is on these roads in that region. They're often improvised explosive device. The intent is to disrupt the lives of the Malian people, to disrupt transport, to disrupt security. These roads are used by civilians, civilian trucks, civilian buses, but also by the security forces, whether it's the Malian army or UN peacekeepers. The aim clearly is to kill and to disrupt. Whether or not this was specifically targeted against this specific convoy, that's not something I can say at this time. Though we have been, our peacekeepers in the field have been victims over and over again of improvised explosive devices.
Thank you for answering me that question. Another question is the objective raised by the UN and the WHO about the COVID vaccination. Last year, they said the objective for UN is to finish 70% of the population in the middle of this year. It's only a month away. Does the Secretary General think this target can be accomplished?
Let me check with WHO. Michelle Nichols, Reuters.
Thank you, Stefan Dujarric, UN. A follow-up on Martin Griffiths' visit to Moscow. Has he made any progress on opening up exports of Ukraine grain?
Mr. Griffiths was indeed in Moscow for 2 days of talks on behalf of the Secretary General. I think from what he's telling us, he had frank and constructive discussions with counterparts in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Defense. As you know, the visit follows the visit to Moscow by Rebecca Greenspan, the head of UNCTAD, last week. It complemented her efforts to facilitate the exports of Russian grain and fertilizer to the international markets. Mr. Griffiths, I think as the Secretary General has said, his mission is focused on seeking means to facilitate the export of Ukrainian grain and related foodstuffs from Ukrainian Black Sea ports. Madame.
Thank you, Steph. I'll follow up on Michelle's question. Turkish officials are talking about an observation mechanism to be based in Istanbul but run by the UN for the grain export from Ukraine. Do you have any details on that for us?
There are a lot of moving pieces in this puzzle. What we're able to confirm is once pieces are in place. So I understand the frustration and the need for answers as we see comments from various capitals. We are moving very methodically and confirming things as they happen. Once we have confirmation of something, we will share that with you.
Are you getting any indications from Russia and Ukraine that there might be an agreement next week when Lavrov visits Turkey on the grain export?
We have seen a lot of positive comments come from various capitals, which is heartening, but I'm not in a position to confirm dates or to provide you with a calendar at this point. Ms. Salome.
Thanks, Steph. Are you aware of protests in Sudan apparently have led to death of a demonstrator, and this is marking the anniversary?
We've seen the reports, which are extremely concerning. It's not the first time that we have seen the Sudanese security forces use live fire on demonstrators. People have a fundamental right to express their opinion, to demonstrate peacefully, and it is the responsibility of governments to ensure that that right is respected and not violated. Alan, and then I'll come back to you, Edie, and then we'll go to the screen.
Thank you, Stefan. Belarusian media are reporting that President Lukashenko had a conversation with the ESG, and he discussed the possibility of exports of Ukrainian grain via the Belarusian territory in exchange for the access of Belarusian goods to the ports in Germany, Baltics, and Poland, I guess. Can you tell anything about this conversation?
What I can tell you is confirm that the Secretary General spoke to President Lukashenko this morning when the Secretary General was still in Stockholm. What I will say is that they discussed the ongoing situation relating to grain and fertilizer, and trying to get those things onto the global markets. Edie?
A follow-up on this question. Can you tell us if Ms. Greenspan and Mr. Griffiths have any other travel plans? Are they coming back?
Ms. Greenspan, I think you may very well see her here on Wednesday. We hope to have her to present the second report from the global crisis response that the Secretary General and her presented about a month and a half ago. So she will be in this room to present that update, and she will share whatever information she's able to share. As for Mr. Griffiths, as soon as next destination is confirmed, I will share that with you. Ms. Salome.
Just wondering, the situation's been pretty tough for peacekeepers in Mali. Are you concerned about more countries withdrawing their troops? Have you heard from any concerns about that?
We haven't heard, I'm not going to say we've heard from anyone in the last 48 hours. I mean, I think the word grateful isn't strong enough to express how we feel towards those member states which continue to provide many peacekeepers around the world in places where there's very little peace to keep, where there's very little political willingness from the parties to actually pursue peace. Mali has been, I think, the hardest hit mission. Egyptians, Jordanians, Chadians, and others have given their lives for the people of Mali, for the cause of peace, and we're eternally grateful for their continued support. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stefan. It has been noticed that violence has been escalating in the occupied Palestinian territories in the last few days. 5 Palestinians were killed in the last 48 hours, including the journalist Hodran Harun Rawasna and the young boy Muhammad Ouda of 17 years old. However, we haven't heard anything. The violence is reached all-time high. 65 Palestinians were killed from the beginning of the year, including 5 women and 9 children. And we haven't heard of any statement regarding
I
the
think,
escalating violence.
First of all, we're obviously extremely concerned by the increased violence we've seen and the heightened tensions in the occupied West Bank, including the incidents over the last few days in which 3 Palestinians, including a female journalist, were shot and killed by Israeli forces in Hebron, Jenin, and Bethlehem. It's important that all sides, Secretary General appeals to all sides for calm and to take action that will lead us back to the path of negotiations. We also need to see the Israeli security forces exercise maximum restraint and use lethal force only when strictly unavoidable and in order to protect life. I think if you read Mr. Veneslan's briefing last week, I think he is very methodical on reporting regularly to the Security Council all of the incidents that he is aware of. Okay.
What about?
Go ahead.
I mean, the journalist, she doesn't have an American passport. She's not working for Al Jazeera. Nobody called for independent investigation. She was working for a local radio.
I mean,
however, there was not even.
Abdelhamid, I just mentioned it. I just spoke about it. I cannot be responsible for statements that other organizations or others may make or not make. Maggie, and then we'll go to our guest.
Hi, Steph. You read, our statement on Ukraine, but does the Secretary General have any comment on the days of this war?
Well, I think if he were to make a comment, it would be to just renew his call for an end to the violence, renew his call for unfettered humanitarian access to all who need it, for the protection of civilians. I think the sooner the parties engage in diplomatic efforts, the better for the prospects of peace. And I think he of course fully agrees with what Amin Awad has said, and we have seen. I think I read out the litany of suffering, of destruction, of the impact that this war has had on civilians. And I think from the first days of this war, the United Nations has been there to support the people of Ukraine in dealing with the impact of this conflict. Yes, Linda, and then we will go to our guest.
Thank you, Steph. Sort of apropos of that question, I was wondering if the Secretary General, if he can say anything public or has publicly, what are his views, or has he any concerns about the escalation in terms of the provision of the sort of highest tech weapons to Ukraine, a sense of whether this can accelerate the fighting or might have...
in any conflict, more weapons are an accelerant. Okay, Maximo, are you with us?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the press conference dedicated to the start of the Albanian presidency of the Security Council for the month of June. With us here today, we have Ambassador Ferit Hoxha, accompanied by our DPR, Ms. Albana Dautlari. And we will first invite Ambassador Hoxha to take the floor to brief you on the program of work during the month, and then we will take questions in the room and virtually. Ambassador, the floor is yours. Yes.
Okay. Now, if I put the glasses, I see you, but I cannot see my papers. If I take the glasses, I can see my papers. So let's start with the papers first. Thank you, Andres, and dear representatives of the media, UN correspondents, and you're a little bit also our colleagues, because you really follow the Council as much and the UN life as much as we do. And I'm extremely pleased, and I warmly welcome all of you to this briefing, the first briefing on the Albanian presidency for the month of June. And thank you all for being present. I would also like to welcome those colleagues of yours, media representatives, who are participating online virtually. It is, for me, a privilege and an honor to address you in my capacity as the President of the Security Council for this month, and as you can easily guess, the first ever for my country, Albania. And I'll be more than happy to share a few highlights of the program of work that was adopted just less than an hour ago at the Council. This meeting with you for every presidency and it's no strange that it comes right after the adoption of the program of work. And this is really the first event of importance. Let me tell you that besides the colleagues that I see almost every day, sometimes even on weekends in the Council, you are among those whom we meet and greet every weekday at your privileged media corner. So happy to see you again here. And I would like to pay tribute to all of you, individually and collectively, to your work and efforts, to your profession, to this noble task of informing the public opinion about the work of the Security Council. We are Albania. We are and will remain committed to an efficient and transparent Security Council during this month, and I very much look forward to a healthy and mutually beneficial relationship with all of you. And thank you, that's personal, thank you for not writing that sometimes you representatives of the member states end up repeating ourselves, which is inevitably part of the complex life of the multilateralism, and particularly the dynamic life and the complex life of the Security Council, which I call the place where lights never go out. June is considered traditionally a busy month. This year is no exception. The program of work that we adopted, and I hope you have had already a copy of it, is just packed. Albania's priorities for the month join our overall priorities in the Council, in the mandate, and they are intimately related to 5 key areas. First, international law, strengthening accountability, advancement of women, peace and security agenda, the relations of the UN with regional and sub-regional organizations, and the working methods of the Council. And let me just go into a little bit more detail on some of them. First, the issue of accountability. Albanian presidency kicks off tomorrow with a high-level debate, open debate, on strengthening accountability and justice for serious violations of international law. The open debate will take place, as I said, tomorrow, and will be presided over by my Prime Minister, Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama. The presence at this level shows how important this topic is for Albania, first, but I'm sure, and given the list of speakers that we have seen so far, it is equally for all UN member states. Upholding international law and protection and promotion of human rights are at the core of Albania's foreign policy and are at the core of our priorities for our mandate in the Council. For far too long, we have watched mass human rights abuses, and the international community is struggling to hold perpetrators of serious crimes to account. We cannot and must not become familiar with impunity. There is an urgency to act now and on behalf and on the name of countless victims of senseless conflicts. And I say so for the abused women of Kosovo, for the grieving mothers of Bosnia, for the children of Ukraine, for the nameless victims in Tigray, for the Hazara in Afghanistan, for the Yazidis in Iraq, for the Rohingyas, for the political prisoners in Myanmar and in Sudan, for the detainees in Syria, for all journalists who have lost their lives in the line of duty, for everyone, everywhere, whose rights have been denied, whose future have been buried, whose dreams have been shattered by abuse. There is a need to do more, better and faster. For all of us, for what we stand for what gets us together and united to uphold the law, to protect the UN Charter, and to preserve multilateralism. The very reason we are here. We must do everything in our power to recommit to core norms and values and redouble our efforts to enforce compliance and stop transgression. Because if not respected and implemented, international law is just the paper it is printed upon. All countries, UN member states, have a role to play, and Albania is doing its part. This is all what is it about our first signature event that will happen tomorrow under the leadership and chairmanship of Prime Minister. The briefers for this event, which, as said, be presided by Prime Minister, will be the President of the International Court of Justice, Judge Donoghue, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, and Oxford Professor Dapo Akande as representative of the civil society. Now, our second item of importance is women, peace and security. In accordance with our priorities as a signatory of the Statement of Shared Commitment with other Council members, Albania will champion women, peace and security and make it a key priority also during the presidency, the month of June. Therefore, our second signature event will be held on the 15th of June, entitled Keeping the Promises, the Role of Regional Organizations in Implementing Women, Peace and Security in the face of political turmoil and seizures of power by force. The open debate on the 15th will be chaired by the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of Albania, Olta Gjachka. We will focus on the role of regional sub-regional organizations in protecting and furthering the implementation of the agenda during these turbulent times, emphasizing the role of these organizations, their engagement, and women-led civil society, and the need for context-specific and tailor-made approaches. We have invited briefers from various regional organizations from all over the world, and we hope to be able to accommodate as many of them as possible. And of course, we expect the Secretary General Guterres to be present at that meeting. And we intend to communicate under the shared commitments on specific country issues related to women, peace and security to continue to raise awareness on the situation of women worldwide. Our third item of importance relates to the informal working group on documentation. It is dedicated to what we commonly qualify as the working methods. I happen to have the honor to chair the IWG, and we will organize on the 28th of June the annual debate on the working methods. As we all know, the Security Council has gone through some tough couple of years under the extraordinary situation of pandemic. So we believe that an open and in-depth debate on the Council working methods, it's timely and very much needed. We look forward to a good exchange and lessons learned on the capacity of the Security Council to adapt to change in discharging its mandate in maintaining international peace and security. The fourth item of primary importance concerns the agenda item cooperation of UN with regional and sub-regional organizations as alone this time, and the Presidency will organize a briefing at an elevated level on cooperation between the United Nations and the European Union. The very turbulent situation in the world, including as a result of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the huge and increasing humanitarian needs across the world, give more incentives to the need for a stronger UN-EU cooperation, especially in political, humanitarian, and human rights aspects. The EU, as I'm sure everybody knows, is also involved in the implementation of various Security Council mandates. And again, profiting from the presence of Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, Gjachka, in the town, she will chair this meeting as well. And we expect the High Representative of the EU, Joseph Borrell, to be present at that meeting. Now, I will move a little bit more quickly now on other parts of the program. As I mentioned, there will be 3 debates, open debates, 2 debates, specific debates, one on IRMCT, residual mechanism on ICTWAR and ICTY on the 4th of 14th of June, and another one on Afghanistan on 23rd of June. It will be a briefing, but also consultations, as we agreed this morning among members of the Council. And all in all, we will have 17 briefings, and there will be 5 mandate renewals. We start this week on Friday. I hope the Council will be able to renew the mandate on Libya, Irini, and then, of course, during the month, the mandates on UNITAMS, MINUTSMA, UNDOF, and the DRC. During our month, Ukraine will be very much present in our program. We will start on the 6th of June. It will focus on the issue of sexual violence in conflict and trafficking of human beings. We keep to intend the issue of Ukraine high on the agenda and meet as often as the reality on the ground will require. We expect to have at this first meeting on Ukraine a high-level participation from the European Union as well. We will have 2 meetings on Syria on humanitarian and political aspects, respectively on 20 June and 29. And then we will have a meeting on Yemen, and we hope that the truce will be extended and a meaningful political process is initiated. So we know that tomorrow the truce ends, but we hope that tomorrow the truce is reconducted for the benefit of the country, its people, and it's mostly the civilians who have always, as for every conflict, but also they're paid the high price of a 7-long-year conflict. We'll have a meeting on Libya, hoping that the constitutional framework will be agreed, completely agreed, and that the progress of the first meeting in Cairo will be sustained so that we have a framework to organize the very much needed elections to give a different perspective to Libya. The Council will also meet on Middle East peace process, Haiti and UNDOF, among others. And on the very last day, there is a very specific meeting on the non-proliferation, and we expect a discussion on JCPOA. And we formulate the hope, again, that during this month, until the day of the meeting, progress will be made and possibly, hopefully, reported at the Council on the ongoing discussions. Colleagues, in line with our commitments, we have tried to strike a balance between open meetings, which for us and for you bring transparency, but also closed consultations, which for us, sometimes for you, bring efficiency on the work of the Council. So there's always a discussion, and we try to strike the right balance on this aspect. And to promote effective and inclusive decision-making, the Albanian presidency is also committed to bringing civil society voices to the Council in a safe and meaningful way, because we think that giving a voice to those who work on the ground, sometimes confronted themselves by violence and conflict, is important, is a value added. It brings really what we sometimes need into our discussion. And this is a way and an opportunity to participate also for the civil society, to be a participant on the political processes, and their views should be heard by everyone. In this respect, we have committed to the OHCHR good practices guidelines on the UN Security Council member states to mitigate intimidation and reprisal. In alignment with those guidelines, we're taking measures to prevent intimidation and reprisal against civil society briefers, and this is part of our shared commitment with other Council members within the Women, Peace and Security agenda. Staying true to our commitment, we have been careful also in identifying and selecting CSO briefers. The majority of them will be women, not just because they are women, but because they are very good representatives with distinguished achievements in their respective fields. Lastly, and I'll stop there, I promise, in presiding the Security Council, Albania will abide by the rules and procedures. We will act in the spirit of fairness and transparency. We will push to seek solutions that contribute in the best way to the fulfillment of the noble commitments of all the members of the Security Council, which is the maintenance of peace and security, and we will, I'm sure, show it by concrete action in reality. With this, Andres, over to you, and I'd be glad to take some comments and questions.
Thank you, Ambassador. You know, as tradition goes, the first questions goes to Anka. Valeria, please, the floor is for you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ambassador, for this press conference on behalf of Anka, and we wish you the best of luck for the busy month ahead. My question, Valeria Robeco from ANSA News Agency. Can you confirm the possibility to work on a Security Council resolution for a naval mission aimed at facilitating the resumption of Ukraine wheat export from the Black Sea ports? And also, what is the collaboration with Italy on the mandate of Albanian Security Council about? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valeria. Grazie, Valeria. Well, I mean, you know that the issue of Ukraine has been in the Council almost every week, sometimes even more. And there's reason for that, because the situation is complex. We know what Ukraine invasion means in terms of international law, in terms of UN Charter, and in terms of upheaval that it has created also on the very aspect that you mentioned, the food security, and of course, very particularly the possibility of export of the existing commodities both in Ukraine and in Russia. We have not seen any concrete text, to be very concrete on that. I would not be surprised that a text is presented. I know that there are various efforts that are being made within and outside the Council, and the Secretary General and the UN are also involved. As soon as we have something, we will be very glad to share that with you if that happens under our presidency. As to the cooperation with our friendly and neighbor country, Italy, we're very happy to work particularly with Italy. I mean, we have absolutely excellent relations, and we're happy about that. And Security Council offers Albania the possibility to reinforce relations not only with Italy, but also with all UN, EU members and other like-minded countries. But we're open to cooperate with every other UN member state.
I give the floor to CBS, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ambassadors. We're looking forward to the month. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. I have a big picture question, which is about the ceasefire that's being negotiated. Some are saying it's Ukraine removes the mines, Russia pulls back. Others are also saying that Ukraine cedes some territory, and that's not something Ukraine wants. What is your view of that? And then the minor question is just, you mentioned Borrell. Charles Michel is also in New York at the very beginning of the month. I believe it's the 6th. Will you have anything at the Security Council with him? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pamela. You're very well informed, as always. Now, on Ukraine, as President of the Council, I must say that we will, of course, see what comes before the member states and how these efforts feed into trying to address that particularly sensitive issue related to food security, and particularly related to the possibility of exports through the naval ports of Ukraine of grain that is in Ukraine, but also other possibilities and contingencies that exist in Russia. Now, on a national capacity, I would say that this highlights one of the issues that we have been highlighting in the Council, that yes, there is a problem in food security, but it's a problem because we cannot really get hands-on the existing commodities in Ukraine and in Russia. And I think it is absolutely the right way to use every possible way to make sure that what is existing is exported, so that those who need it, and we know how many in the world are struggling, how many countries are struggling because their normal furniture imports have been disrupted. So I think that it is the right way. All efforts should converge into one thing: how to make sure that there is a safe passage for those be ships or other ways of transporting, but it should happen sooner rather than later. As to the presence of high officials from the European Union, I mentioned that on the 6th, on the meeting on Ukraine, European Union representatives will be in town. Yes, you're right. Charles Michel, the President of the Council of the European Union, will be in town. He will participate at that meeting, and will be very happy to hear what the European Union will bring at that level. That's on the 6th? Yeah. On that, when the European Union or any country, organization or country participate at that level, it is that it really shows the primary importance of the topic under discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. I see Denada, please. floor is for you, Benada.
There have been several declarations by the Russian authorities, including President Putin, drawing parallel between Donbass and Kosovo. How do you think of it? Is there any similarity? Thank you.
Thank you, Denada, and thank you for coming from Albania to ask a question. As the President of the Council, I may say that Kosovo is not in the program of work for this month, but I would like to make a couple of comments on my national capacity. From the outset, we don't see any similarity between Kosovo, an independent state, and the unprovoked military aggression of Russia in Ukraine and the prefabricated, that's how I'd like to call them, republics in Donbass, for the very simple reason because there isn't any similarity. And for the sake of truth, there is no similarity between Kosovo and any other situation anywhere in the world. Now, I will go back and I will not take much time, but it's important for us as well because this issue is in the Council agenda at least twice a year so far. NATO operation in '99 followed over a year of intense diplomatic efforts by the UN and the contact group where Russia was a member as well. There are 8 Security Council resolutions dealing with Kosovo before 1244, which established the UN mission UNMIK, which is still going on. So the UN Security Council at that time branded the ethnic cleansing in Kosovo and the mounting number of refugees as a threat to peace and security, and that was for good reason. So NATO mission helped to put an end to large-scale gross violations of human rights, killing of civilians, and atrocities as they have been documented, including by ICTY. And also one thing, the ICJ opinion in 2010 ruled that the Kosovo independence declared in 2008 did not violate international law. The very same ICJ a couple of months ago issued an order unsubstantiating the Russian claim, which, let's not forget, was the justification for war, the supposedly genocide that Ukraine had been conducting on the Russian minorities in Ukraine. And that order called Russia to stop because they did not find any reason to substantiate the claim for genocide. So as we know, there are many institutions, many organizations, regional and global, who could deal with the issues, concerns, and grievances of Russian population in Ukraine. But unfortunately, Russia chose another way, just going to war, invading its neighbor. And we know now the results. And then my final comment on this. Kosovo is not a matter of peace and security. It's no longer a matter that should be discussed under Chapter 7. I've said that very clearly in the Council, and that position will be our own mandate, because Kosovo today is a matter of state building, of democratic institutions performing, and of civil society, free civil society to develop further. So this is the perspective. And seen from Albania, a neighboring country to Kosovo, the Western Balkans is a fast-developing region. We do not forget what happened, but we are not stuck in the past. We are looking forward with vision, forward how we can work more together, forward how we can increase people-to-people contacts, and how we can get ourselves and the region together moving forward in our well-deserved Euro-Atlantic perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Abdul Hamid, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. And first, I want to comment on your introductory remarks. You mentioned many people suffering around the world. You mentioned Hazara in Afghanistan, Syria, Myanmar, but you forgot the Palestinians who are being suffering for 74 years. I am wondering, how could you forget the suffering of the Palestinian people? But my question also, talking about accountability, is Israel, for all those years, in violation of international law? Should it be held accountable, in your view? Do they have the right to defend their occupation, and the Palestinians don't have the right to resist occupation? Can you give me a clear-cut answer? Many ambassadors, try to find a middle language, evasive language. do the Palestinians have the right to defend themselves and fight occupation? Thank you.
Thank you, Abdulhamid, and I'm sorry if I really did not mention specifically Palestinians. I said also everyone everywhere in the world who was suffering, so that was, and certainly you're right, there are Palestinians suffering and there are Palestinians who need to have their rights upheld. Now, the position of Albania, and of course I'm speaking on national capacity because we know that the Council is divided on this issue, and the issue is every month in the Council. You follow them very closely, I'm sure. You follow also the position of Albania on this. Our position on this is pretty much aligned with the position of the European Union. And our stance has been, is, and will not change that we are in favor of two-state solution. One Israel which needs to be secure, needs to feel secure, needs not to be and feel threatened, because otherwise we cannot advance in any solution, and a viable, contiguous state of Palestine where everyone enjoys the same right. There is no solution that can be sustained if Israelis and Palestinians do not feel equal before the law. The law is and should be the same. Are we yet there? No, otherwise we wouldn't be discussing on that. But this is what we look forward, this is what we wish, this is what we work for. And I hope that in a not too distant future, given that this is the longest conflict ever in modern history, we will be able to report otherwise, not of suffering, not of violence, which brings violence, but reporting progress. I know that sometimes steps are insufficient, meetings always at higher level, and it's so easy in such a complex situation to find reasons why it doesn't work rather than to find ground for it to make it work. I wish I had a better response for you, but this is the clear, direct, sincere response of the position of my country. We feel for everyone whose rights are denied. We feel for everyone who needs to be and to feel a citizen, to have a future, to have a project, to build their lives in cooperation and in friendship with others.
Thank you, and I will pass the floor to Edith. Edith, please, from Associated Press.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. A couple of follow-up questions. On your signature issues on accountability, women, peace and security, and cooperation with the EU, will there be any outcome documents? Let me go with that first. I'm sure we'd all like to know.
For the time being, we do not plan to have any outcome document. We're reflecting, it's always, the documents, be it the very simple ones, which are press elements or PRSTs, going up higher in the chain, are always something that take a lot of time, take a lot of brainstorming. I'm in the brainstorming state with my team so far, and if ever we come with something more concrete, we will of course inform as appropriate the Council and of course beyond the Council.
And on the Ukraine meeting, we know that Charles Michel's going to be there and obviously speaking. Who else do you expect to be briefing at that meeting?
We are expecting to have as a briefer the civil society. We will be looking, there will be someone from the civil society, and for reasons that you understand, we do not announce the civil society representatives far in advance, just to take care of what I mentioned in my introductory remarks, that we want them to participate in a safe and meaningful way. But there will be one representative from civil society. We are expecting also the Secretariat, the UN Secretariat, to be appropriately represented at the core of the personnel who deals with sexual violence and trafficking of persons. This process is sometimes back and forth to see the viability, but of course we will have the appropriate people to brief in the Council.
And on, I'm still doing just a couple,
I
one
hope
more
this is the
follow-up.
last one, Edith.
Okay.
As you have the microphone, go on, Edith.
Last one. On your main accountability debate tomorrow, what do you hope will come out of that debate? What what's your real goal in doing this?
Two issues. Again, we will not propose any product, and I'm wondering whether we need a product, because we have international law, we have the mechanisms, we have the tools, we just need to make sure that we use them. We want the Council, again, to highlight this issue, and as you may remember, and I'm speaking on a national capacity, Albania is a co-founder of the group of Friends on Accountability following the aggression on Ukraine. We are very active, and we co-chair the group. Albania organized an area formula on the 27th of April with a distinguished panel of briefers, but also with an admirable participation from the UN member states, the Council, and outside on the issue of accountability in Ukraine. As more time passes, we see that unfortunately, more crimes are committed in Ukraine, but not only. And we wanted this meeting on accountability not to be focused on one specific issue, on one place, on one country, on one situation, on one theater, but across the board. Because we think that it's important that we remind ourselves that if accountability is not observed, then this is a license to do more for anyone who is used to abuses. And because there are difficulties in making sure to bring perpetrators to account, I think that we need at least maintain this issue as high as possible on the agenda. There is no peace without accountability. There is no peace without bringing those who are responsible for atrocity crimes, for war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide to account. The sooner, the better, because we owe it to all those victims, including, of course, everyone in the world who suffers from abuse. And that's the main purpose. So maintaining it high into agenda, mobilizing the Council and the UN membership in more action vis-à-vis accountability.
Thank you. And I give the floor to CCTV, please.
Hi, Ambassador. This is De Zhishu from China Central Television. First, wish you a successful presidency. I have two questions. First, it's a quick confirmation. You mentioned there would be like 5 mandate extensions.
Right.
Does this include the Syrian cross-border the humanitarian resolution?
The response is very clear, no, because that's for July.
Okay, so the second question, just like you mentioned, it's a very extraordinary situation now in the Security Council, and it's quite divided. Do you think it's important to show the world that a unified Security Council would be important? And as the president of the Security Council, what's your plan to, basically show the world that this council is still working on big issues? Thank you.
Any time that there are divisive issues in the Council, through the positions of the member states, shows these divisions. Division is not what the Council should. The situation of division is not what the Council should be. And of course, seen from the elected, from the perspective of elected member, of course we regret that the Council finds itself in situations of an inability to act, of inability to approve, to come together, to adopt important decisions, resolutions that affect the lives of the people somewhere in the world. The Security Council mandate is to uphold, to maintain peace and security. When the Council is blocked, it does the contrary. Unfortunately, this is the truth, this situation, and we've seen that so many times. And there is one problem into that, is the misuse of veto. The use, but unfortunately the misuse of veto. This is one of the issues that we need to discuss further to see how we can reform the veto, and Albania is part of every initiative in reforming the veto, because that would help the Council to be more productive, to be more efficient, and to be more responsive in implementing its mandate. Of course, I would like the Council every day to be united. Of course, we will try and do our best for the Council to be united with our proposals, with those informal consultations, if we can manage. I don't have any illusion that we will solve the problems, but trust me, we'll try.
Thank you. And I give the floor to Murad. Murad, please.
Thank you. Murad from Al Jazeera Arabic. Israel increasingly threatening the historical status quo of Al-Aqsa Mosque, and we have seen the tension recently. Do you think addressing this conflict by holding only one meeting with no outcomes is enough?
Thank you for the question. The issue of the status of the holy sites is present in the meetings, is present in the positions of member states, including Albania's. There is one meeting on the month, but nothing prevents any country in the Council to ask for more meetings, and that is for the Middle East peace process or any other issue, as we have seen. Sometimes there is more than one meeting. It happened, if I'm not wrong, under the Russian presidency, we had 4 meetings on Syria because they added one meeting. But again, the status of the holy sites is regulated between Israel and Jordan. So there is an agreement, and any time issues come up, I think it's first to see the implementation of that agreement between 2 member states, and then if needed be, that can be extended. But of course, I don't think that the issue is at a state that the Council need to be involved more. If needed, I think member states will find a way to bring it to the Council if the Council can contribute into that.
Thank you. And I see Halil wants to take the floor.
Thank you. Urime successor Cyprus. Ambassador, the Russian aggression in Ukraine, a reflection on the Western Balkans, where we saw pretty much the same did happen over 20 years ago in Croatia, in Bosnia, and in Kosovo through the Russian satellite Serbia. How it is? How do you see that?
Faleminderit Halil, përshëndetje. Thank you for that question. That joins a little bit the comments that I made earlier, but more specifically, and of course I'm speaking on national capacity. Of course, we know the position of Russia vis-à-vis the open door policy of NATO and vis-à-vis the countries who have aspirations of joining the European Union. Albania is a candidate country, and we very much hope that next week, when the European Council meets, we have good news of opening negotiations for accession. I don't know if that will happen or not, but this is our wish, and Albania is ready for that. This means that our roadmap, our vision, our future for Albania, for North Macedonia, another candidate, for Montenegro, a candidate that has opened every chapter with the European Union, and for Bosnia and Kosovo, and of course for Serbia. Serbia is a candidate country. That road is clear. Whoever comes across that will have to deal with us. And as far as Albania is concerned, we are not bothered by whatever attempts to derail our process, because we are strong enough to really resist that, because this is the aspiration of the Albanian people. Now, different countries have different interests. Different countries might make different efforts. And as I said, NATO aspiration of some of the countries in the region doesn't really coincide with Russia's, but it's up to us, and it's up to our cooperation with our partners, with our many countries, with the European Union, to resist every attempt to derail this process, and we will not allow it. Because also, let's remember, as I said, we have a cooperation between our countries, and we look forward not only of individual advancement to the European Union, but also of collective advancement. And we have created frameworks of cooperating as closely as possible with each other.
Colleagues, may I remind you that we have way past 45 minutes. I have one question from Efrem. He wants to take the floor from Arab News.
Thank you so much. Ambassador, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm seeing 2 meetings on Syria, as you mentioned, but there's a third supposedly regular meeting on Syria's chemical weapons that we don't see here. So I'm just wondering what happened, how did that happen? Because last time we checked, the initial declaration of the Assad government is still incomplete, according to the UN. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. That reassures me how attentively you look at the program and our work. There is no departure on the regularity of 3 meetings on the Syrian file, so the political, humanitarian, and chemical weapons. We made an exception this time, but this is no precedent, and this is absolutely no departure from the normal work on Syria. But since the meeting under the American presidency happened very late, and we do not expect, and you're right, the response from the Assad regime is incomplete and is deemed not satisfactory from the OPCW and, of course, from many in the Council, including my own country. We thought that given the packed program that we had, we agreed among Council members to have a meeting early next presidency. Of course, it will be up to the presidency to decide on the date and depending on the program. But I mean, this short time between end of May and beginning of July would not really constitute any precedent or departure. So there will be a meeting very early in July, and of course, we'll come back to the issue of the chemical weapons in the Syrian file.
Thank you. And the last question, I'm warning everyone, it's from the Turkish Anadolu Agency.
Thank you,
We'll take your question as well, I promise you. Yeah.
So there are cameras online. There are.
Well, I was seeing a blank screen. Now I can see you.
Andres, we'll take as many as we can.
Please, first Turkish
Thank you,
Anadolu.
Ambassador Betül Yürük, Turkish News Agency Anadolu. I've got two questions, one on Syria. We have been hearing concerns about Russia closing the last crossing on the Syrian border, which allows humanitarian aid into Idlib and other parts of Syria. And we also heard about negotiations. What have you been hearing from your Russian colleague? And does the Security Council have Plan B if that border closes? And also, is the Council willing to make any compromises to make sure that it stays open? And a second question maybe on your national capacity. How do you think the dispute between Turkey, Finland, and Sweden over their NATO membership should be dealt with? Thanks.
Thank you very much. On the first one, as President, I may say that this question is not part of the program during this month. If anything, in terms of proposal for the renewal of mandate comes, of course, we'll take that into the normal practical negotiation process between the member states so that we prepare ourselves for the renewal in July. Now, on a national capacity, I may say that if, and I'm not aware of any Russian decision to renew or not to renew, I don't know. I mean, we are in touch with them, we will see, like everybody else is in touch with them, and we always cooperate with everyone in the Council. But from our point of view, the closure of the only cross-border passage for Syrians, for those 14 million people in Syria who depend on humanitarian assistance from abroad, be it cross-border, cross lines, that means a condemnation to death, to starvation, to hunger, to millions of people. I hope no one, not Russia, not any other country, will come to that decision to condemn civilians, poor people in need with death and hunger. So this is a big responsibility. Again, I don't know where the lines of thoughts are, but we know how important it is, and we highlight that every month in the meetings, on humanitarian issues. So we expect discussion. There may be difficult, but again, we expect discussion to be to happen very, very, very soon. And then on the comment between Turkey, Finland, and Sweden, I wouldn't make any comment because member states deal with the issues in different ways, and I'm sure a solution will be found between countries concerned. Turkey is a friendly country, is a NATO member, is one of the most powerful countries in NATO, and I'm sure that Turkey is equally interested in having a strong organization which has been reinvigorated after the what happened in Ukraine, and everyone sees now how important it is to have that collective defense organization in face of the unpredictability of behavior of some states.
Thank you. And I will take a question from the screen, from VTC. I'm sorry, I don't see the name. Please, the journalist on the VTC. Iftikhar Ali. Mr. Ali.
Can you hear?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. This is Iftikhar Ali from Associated Press of Pakistan. I know last month the Security Council issued a statement concerning the status of women and girls in Afghanistan, but having done that, is the Council now prepared to do more to do more so that the Taliban the Taliban honor the pledges they have made to the international community?
Thank you very much. I think Afghanistan is one of the issues in the Council where is broad consensus on many aspects of the situation, the current situation in Afghanistan. The fact that we had a press statement under the situation in which the Council is evolving nowadays is very positive. What happened is first a breach of a commitment by the Taliban. It's very bad, it's unwelcome, and it has huge consequences for women and girls in Afghanistan. So we will have two meetings. We'll have two meetings on Afghanistan during our presidency. And again, we will have a briefing, but also we need to go into more details. And when we need to do that, we go to consultations to really ask more difficult questions, go more into the nitty-gritty of every aspect of the situation in Afghanistan. And as far as Albania is concerned, we are very pushy within the shared commitments that we have on women, peace and security to really be more concrete, more forthcoming, more vocal on the situation in Afghanistan, and I hope that the Council will come with us on that issue.
Thank you very much.
I
see the gentleman that the ambassador himself promised.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. Congratulations again for the first presidency of the Security Council by Albania. You say in your presentation that Albania, the core, even also your Prime Minister did today with a video, that the core of the Albanian foreign policy and participation here at the UN, there is human rights, the defense of human rights. My question is about migrants, and specifically on the situation of the migrants in Libya, where they actually pushed back them by the Libyan Coastal Guard, and then when they pushed back, they tortured, they put it in camp, and the situation, we know what it is. Recently, the IOM accused the European Union of close both eyes on this situation, on not intervening, on not doing enough to protect the migrants. So my question is, first, do you think that this is an issue that the Security Council has to address? And what you will do as a president of the Security Council that has not been done so far about this issue? And then I have another question that is, President Biden recently went to Japan, and accordingly to what the Prime Minister of Japan said, he said they assured Japan that the United States will push for the reform of the Security Council for having a permanent seat for Japan. So what do you think about this issue? Do you think it's just talk? I mean, it's easy just to say, yeah, the United States will support, or there is actually a change, something that is happening for a reform of the Security Council, and what would be your position, if you can say, maybe in your national capacity? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The two questions. First, for the migrants. As I mentioned, we'll have a meeting on Libya. And of course, every aspect of the Libyan situation, a very complex one, politically, humanitarian aspect. And of course, the issue of migrants are always present in our discussion. I can tell you what we do as Albania on migrants and displaced people, what we have done with the Afghanis, what we have done with the Kosovars in 99 and so on and so on. I'm not here to issue recommendations on how specific countries or regions act, but I know that the European Union, I can say that, is very much involved because what happens in Libya affects the security of the southern Mediterranean, to which Albania is also part. And I think we should always be wary to do whatever we can to save lives of unfortunate people who, for whatever reason, choose to migrate. Is there a scope to do more? Of course. But again, it's not only the Security Council. There are many other UN entities who deal with that, who have the primary responsibility. But again, bringing every issue linked to peace and security in the Council is the right thing. And regarding the second question on the reform of Security Council, now, the reform has been going on since '93. We know the 5 clusters. We know how much that has advanced. We know that every time the intergovernmental informal group meets, we have more or less the same positions, same groups, United for Consensus, G4, different other configurations. The reform has not moved. I very much hope that the situation that we have now could be an impetus to really be more active and to progress towards meaningful reform of Security Council, because everybody agrees the Security Council today does not represent the world of today. So there is need for reform, but we have not, among member states, agreed how the reform should happen, what it should really mean in terms of membership, non-permanent, permanent, and so on and so on. The position of Albania on this, given the very strong contradictions that exist between different countries who are close to Albania, we don't have a position regarding the permanent members' membership, yes or no. We don't take a stand on that issue, but our position is that our group, in case the elected membership is increased, our group, the East European states group, should have one additional because of the multiplicity of member states after the different events that have happened in the last 3 decades. I mean, the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the dissolution of Yugoslavia. But that's where we are on this. But I don't expect really any fundamental change to happen in terms of reform of Security Council. Unfortunately, that's the case.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.